She still thinks I'm working late. It's almost cute." That was the first line I read, just sitting there, blinking at me from a dusty old tablet I hadn't touched in over a year. The words didn't register at first. I reread them like they were a joke, a quote from a show, or some forgotten meme. But then I saw the name above the message, Jeremy, my husband, and below it, the response. "Poor girl, tell her anything and she believes it, huh?" That's when the room went quiet. The kids were in the next room playing video games, but suddenly their laughter sounded far away, muffled under the weight of something unraveling. I'm Emily, a financial coordinator at a medical firm, a mother of two, and, until that moment, someone who thought she had built a life on trust. I married Jeremy when I was 27. He was funny, reliable, the guy who opened doors and remembered anniversaries. We had our fights, sure. Life got busy. We both worked. We had 2 boys within 4 years. And intimacy faded into routines, but nothing that felt unmanageable, nothing that felt fatal. Until now. That old tablet was never meant to be anything more than a forgotten piece of tech. I only turned it on because the kids were pestering me to let them watch cartoons and all our other devices were dead. The battery barely held a charge, but the home screen blinked to life without a password, and with it came a flood of notifications from an old chat app. One Jeremy used to use before switching phones. Curious, I tapped. I wasn't snooping, not at first. But then that message popped up, and it was like stepping into a house you thought you knew, only to find hidden rooms behind the walls. The messages weren't recent, but they didn't need to be. They stretched back months, maybe longer, conversations between Jeremy and someone named Allison. Her name felt familiar, then it clicked, Allison with the laugh like static from his grad school cohort. She'd always been flirty, but I chalked it up to her personality. I never thought Jeremy had stayed in touch, yet here they were. Dozens of messages, some flirty, others cruel. What stung most weren't the sexual undertones or innuendos. It was the mockery, the way they spoke about me like I was some distant inconvenience, a figure Jeremy had to maneuver around to maintain his little fantasy. She bought me new dress shirts this week, said I looked tired and wanted to cheer me up. God, the guilt makes her generous. I sat on the edge of the couch, fingers numb against the screen. I scrolled back, hoping to find a point where he stopped, but it just kept going. Confessions, flirtations, memories of the past, complaints about our marriage. He had opened his heart to her in a way he hadn't done with me in years, and she lapped it up like it was her birthright. I didn't react immediately, no yelling, no frantic calls to friends. I closed the app, I put the tablet away, and then I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring out the window at the backyard where Jeremy and I had once laid out plans for our garden, our deck, our future. I thought about confronting him that night, but something stopped me. Not fear, not doubt, control. I'm not the kind of woman who moves without thinking. I've spent my life being steady, practical, the one who handles chaos with grace. And this was the moment I realized that grace would be my weapon. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't storm out. I would gather, observe, prepare. Because if Jeremy thought he could rewrite our story behind my back, I was going to make sure the ending wasn't his to control. In the days that followed, I played my part flawlessly. Jeremy came home late again 2 nights later, offering the same tired excuse about client meetings running long. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and asked if he wanted me to reheat dinner. He didn't even notice the extra seconds I held his gaze or the way I watched his phone when he set it down. Screen turned face down like always. I wasn't looking for more proof. I already had everything I needed, but I wanted to study him now, understand how deep his deception went. It wasn't just the messages or the late nights. It was the way he had been erasing me piece by piece in his version of the story. So I made sure to be everything he claimed I wasn't. I laughed at his jokes during dinner. I planned a movie night with the boys, made their favorite snacks, and posted pictures of our happy family on social media. I even suggested Jeremy and I plan a weekend getaway, just the two of us, something we hadn't done in years. He nodded distractedly, said he'd check his schedule. Of course, he never brought it up again, but every interaction, every dismissal was fuel. I wasn't just buying time, I was reestablishing my narrative. Letting him believe I was the same naive, patient wife he had underestimated in those messages. At night, once he was asleep, I'd lie in bed and go through our bank records. I wasn't looking for financial betrayal, well, not yet. But I needed to understand our full picture, what accounts were in my name alone, what debts we carried, what patterns I could use to my advantage when the time came. And I began documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, photos of him slipping into the garage late at night to take a call, his schedule, his stories, even his gas receipts. I kept it all in a locked folder on a separate drive, backed up twice. I even installed a simple call log app on the tablet, one he never used but still synced to his account. It confirmed my suspicions, late-night calls to a number I didn't recognize. Allison's, I assumed. Through it all, I stayed calm, focused. The kids didn't notice anything different. And Jeremy, in his arrogance, became even sloppier. I wasn't sure if it was comfort or entitlement, but the man who once tried so hard to cover his tracks now barely cared if I saw the dirt on his shoes. He had no idea that the woman sleeping next to him had already stepped out of the marriage emotionally. I was done mourning. What came next wasn't grief, it was strategy. I scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney downtown under the name Emily Rivers, my maiden name. I told my office I needed a long lunch to handle some family paperwork. It wasn't a lie. The attorney was sharp, clear-eyed, and refreshingly direct. She asked if I had evidence. I showed her the tablet, the backups. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she said only one word. Good. That word stayed with me the rest of the day, not in a triumphant way, not yet, but as a confirmation. That my instincts were right, that I wasn't overreacting, that preparation wasn't paranoia. When I got home that evening, Jeremy was in the kitchen making himself a drink. He asked how my day was. I smiled and said, productive. He had no idea. I didn't need more confirmation, I already knew. But sometimes the truth doesn't fully set in until it slices clean, until it looks you in the eye and dares you to look away. It happened on a Tuesday. He left early, claiming a breakfast meeting with a new client. Normally, I'd be too busy wrangling the kids to think twice, but that morning something felt off. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it, a little too polished, like a script he'd rehearsed. After he left, I walked into the laundry room, pulled down the basket of dry cleaning receipts he never thought I paid attention to, and there it was, the same charge from a hotel just outside the city. Twice in the last 2 months, midweek, morning hours, both labeled conference room booking. Jeremy didn't work in sales. He didn't book conference rooms. I knew exactly what that meant. I dropped the receipt on the counter and stared at it. For some reason, it was this small clinical piece of paper that broke through whatever thin hope I had left. He was using our money, our life, to sustain a lie. And worse, he wasn't even trying to be careful anymore. That evening, I checked the synced call logs, the same number again. I copied it into my phone, then searched it through a reverse lookup. It was registered to a small business outside our city, Allison's new consulting firm. She'd gone independent according to her LinkedIn page, which I found in less than a minute. It all fit, their past. The emotional affair turned physical, the planning, the slow exit from our marriage, not through courage or honesty, but through secrecy and cowardice. I felt something change in me that night. The sadness I'd been carrying, the disappointment, the sense of failure, it calcified, hardened, not into bitterness, but clarity. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about boundaries, about protecting my dignity, about making sure he never got to frame this as a mutual drifting apart. I made a private appointment with a financial planner the next day. I wanted to understand the landscape, our retirement, our mortgage, the college funds. I asked pointed questions: what's marital property? What's protected under infidelity? What assets can I claim under sole custody? The planner answered with professional detachment, but I saw something shift when I laid out the situation plainly. He didn't look at me like a victim. He looked at me like someone preparing for war. That night, Jeremy brought home takeout, the kind he knew I liked, and made a big deal about making up for being gone so much. He leaned in to kiss my cheek. I let him. He talked about a potential business trip coming up, and possibly the same weekend I'd seen marked in his chat thread with Allison. He even joked, maybe you can have a girls' night while I'm gone. I smiled, nodded, told him that sounded lovely. In my mind, I was already making notes. Every word he said was another log on the fire, and I let it burn slow. I let it build, because when I moved, it wouldn't be out of rage. It would be precision, timing, control. I wasn't going to destroy him impulsively. I was going to take everything he built his lie on, my trust, my patience, our family, and reframe it so clearly that even he couldn't pretend he hadn't seen it coming. If betrayal is an earthquake, then strategy is the aftershock you control. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was trying to protect myself. And I knew that required planning, not passion. I started by shifting small things in our daily routine. I moved our important documents from the shared filing cabinet into a personal lockbox I kept at work. Passports, birth certificates, insurance policies, all in a secure drawer labeled under a client code only I understood. I rerouted my direct deposit into a separate account, one he didn't know about, and changed the settings on my work benefits to remove his access. It wasn't about hiding, it was about reclaiming my side of the life we had built. The lawyer I had seen earlier helped me draft a preliminary separation agreement. She told me not to serve it yet, just to have it ready. And I made sure I understood every clause. I wanted no room for confusion when the time came. Custody, division of assets, spousal support, all laid out with brutal clarity. Meanwhile, I began to reframe how I presented myself to the outside world. At work, I took on a high-visibility project and stayed late some nights, partially to build my case for independent income, but also to remind myself that I still had value outside of my marriage. I started therapy quietly through an online service, no paper trail, no billing to our shared insurance. In sessions, I didn't talk about anger. I talked about how to hold on to myself, how to move with intention. My therapist said something that stuck with me. Control doesn't come from vengeance, it comes from clarity. You already know who he is. Now you decide who you want to be in response. So I focused on the things I could shape. I scheduled a consultation with a real estate agent, posing as someone looking for options just in case. I got an estimate on the house and took pictures of everything Jeremy had bought over the years, from his guitars to the sports memorabilia he claimed were investments. Anything of value I cataloged. But I never let the mask slip at home. Jeremy, if anything, became more relaxed. Maybe he thought my calm meant forgiveness. Or maybe he believed I would never leave him, that I was too comfortable, too invested, too good. He still texted Allison, I still saw the logs. And yet he kept underestimating me. He once said during dinner, almost jokingly, "You'd probably survive better without me than I would without you." He laughed when he said it. I didn't. That wasn't flattery, that was a truth he hadn't realized he'd spoken, because I already was surviving without him. He just didn't know it yet. I made one final move that week. I installed a tracking app on the old tablet. It wasn't about surveillance. I already had what I needed. But if he was going to meet her again, I wanted to be ready. I wanted to know the when and where. And then, just like that, it came. A weekend trip. Client development, he said. Out of town for 2 nights. He gave me the name of a hotel. not knowing it matched the one from the receipts. He even kissed me goodbye that Friday morning and said, "Hold down the fort for me, Em." I smiled, always. Then I watched him drive off, confident and clueless. And I went back inside, picked up the tablet, and checked the tracker. He was headed exactly where I thought he would be. My plan wasn't just ready, it was waiting. Allison had always been the kind of woman who made herself known without ever raising her voice. I remember meeting her once, years ago, at a holiday party when Jeremy and I were newly married. She wore red lipstick and laughed like everything around her was beneath her attention. She shook my hand and looked past me at the same time. I remember thinking she was harmless. I was wrong. From the messages I'd read, she wasn't some accidental temptation. She was deliberate. She knew he was married. She knew about me, and she seemed to enjoy it. "She's too soft to leave you," she wrote once. "Women like her don't walk away. They just fold." That line hit harder than most. Not because it was cruel, though it was, but because it was calculated. She wanted to believe I was weak, and Jeremy did too. That's why they never bothered to truly hide. They thought I'd never fight back. Their weekend together was coming. I had confirmed the booking through a friend who worked in hospitality. Same hotel, same floor, same pattern. They weren't clever, they were just confident I wouldn't act. But I wasn't going to interrupt them with drama or accusations. No screaming in lobbies, no public confrontations. That would make me look unhinged, emotional. Instead, I was going to confront the situation on my terms where I held all the power. The day before Jeremy left, I printed the separation agreement. I had it bound and placed it inside a plain leather folder alongside copies of the financial records, the call logs, and the photographs I'd taken of his work trips. I included a simple cover sheet, presented for your review. Then I made one more call to our attorney. I told her everything was in place, and I asked her to prepare for a signature meeting the following Monday. She said, "You've done your homework." I said, "No, I've done my life's work." Jeremy left the next morning with a gym bag and a smug goodbye. He said he might be unreachable for parts of the weekend. Bad signal where we're going. I nodded like a fool. Then I packed a bag of my own. Because I wasn't just going to deliver the folder. I was going to deliver a message. You don't get to rewrite my story while I'm still holding the pen. I arrived at the hotel just after noon. I wore gray, soft slacks, a fitted blazer, nothing flashy. Just clean lines and a calm presence. The kind of outfit that says, I didn't come here to fall apart. I came to deliver facts. The front desk staff didn't look twice when I walked in. I'd done my research. I knew Jeremy and Allison had booked the suite under his business name. Corporate rate, paid in advance. That made what I was about to do very simple. I rode the elevator in silence, folder in hand. My heart wasn't racing, it was steady, focused. I wasn't here to catch them in the act. I didn't need to see anything. What mattered was the moment, the split second when Jeremy realized he had underestimated me from the very beginning. I knocked on the suite door, 3 firm taps. He opened it shirtless, drink in hand, laughing at something behind him, her voice. And then he froze. His eyes locked on mine like he was seeing a ghost. I didn't say a word. I handed him the folder. He looked down at it like it might explode. What is this? Everything, I said, quiet but steady. Everything you didn't think I saw. He stood there, stunned. I didn't bother asking to come in. I didn't want to see the bed, the wine glasses, the woman who thought she'd won. From inside the suite, I heard her call out, "Who is it, babe?" Babe. I let the word hang in the air between us like smoke. He didn't answer her. This is a separation agreement, I said. It's been reviewed by my lawyer. You'll see the asset lists, custody terms, and a schedule for signing. I've already had copies delivered to your office. He blinked. Wait, Emily, can we talk about this? Not here. I already did my talking, Jeremy, in therapy, alone, for months. His face twitched. This is crazy. You're ambushing me. Number and ambush is what you did when you turned our marriage into a side story and made me the punchline. This? I nodded to the folder in his hand. This is mercy. I could have burned it all down. He opened the folder, thumbing through the pages, eyes scanning the receipts, the call logs, the photos. His voice dropped. How long have you been? Long enough to make peace with the fact that I loved someone who didn't love me back with the same care. Long enough to realize I'm not the fool you wrote me to be. Allison finally appeared in the background, wrapped in one of the hotel robes, her hair still wet from the shower. She saw me and blinked like she was trying to place a distant memory. Jeremy turned, panicked. Go back inside. But she didn't. She stared at me. So you're her. I met her gaze, not with fury, with something colder. Pity. You built this on someone else's life, I said. Let's see how long it holds without the lies. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, the kids know you're gone for the weekend. I told them you're at a retreat to get your head straight. That's what this is, isn't it? Neither of them answered. They couldn't. I walked away without raising my voice once. By the time I got to my car, my hands were trembling, not with fear, but with release. I had done it, not the confrontation itself. That was just logistics. What I had really done was reclaim my narrative. I wasn't a scorned wife. I was the architect of my own recovery. And Jeremy, he'd just met the version of me he never saw coming. Jeremy didn't come home Sunday night. He texted, not called, to say he needed time to think. I didn't respond. What was left to think about? The moment I handed him that folder, our story was already over. Now it was just paperwork. On Monday morning, my lawyer called to say Jeremy's attorney had reached out. No negotiation, no argument. He'd signed the acknowledgement of receipt and was open to a peaceful process. Of course he was. That was his pattern. Play the hero in public, clean up the wreckage in private. The kids asked where he was. I told them calmly that their dad was going to stay somewhere else for a while. They didn't press. My oldest, Ben, just nodded slowly like he already knew. Kids sense more than we think. I made their lunches, took them to school, and went to work like it was any other Monday. But I wasn't the same woman who had sat quietly at my desk, wondering if I was imagining things. I was sharper now, tired, yes, but clear. Jeremy came by later that week to collect some clothes. He asked if we could keep things civil. I agreed, not for his sake, but for the boys. I let him pack in silence while I folded laundry in the next room. The house didn't feel empty when he left. It felt honest, real. Mine. In the weeks that followed, things moved fast. He moved into a rental. I transitioned to a part-time schedule so I could be home more with the kids. The court assigned me primary custody, no resistance from Jeremy. Whether it was guilt or strategy, I didn't care. I got what mattered most. He still tried to call sometimes to suggest dinner as a family or to update me on work. I kept the conversation short, focused, polite, but the door had closed and he knew it. Every time he saw me, I think he expected some version of the woman he'd mocked, the soft one, the forgiving one. She was gone, and in her place stood someone who had looked betrayal in the eye and chosen not to become it. People like to talk about moving on like it's a clean break, a moment where everything resets. But that's not how healing works. It's not a leap. It's a reclaiming, inch by inch. In the months after the separation, I rebuilt quietly. I rearranged the house, not out of bitterness, but to make space that felt truly mine. I painted the kitchen a warm, deep green. I took down the pictures that no longer told the truth and replaced them with ones of the boys, our trips, my solo hikes. My therapist called it rewriting your visual narrative. I just called it breathing again. I got promoted at work. I hadn't expected it. I'd stepped back to part-time after all. But my leadership on that project had turned heads. The offer came with flexible hours, and for the first time in years I felt seen. The boys adjusted better than I expected. Children are resilient, but more than that, they're perceptive. They knew things were calmer now, lighter. I still made space for their questions, their sadness, but I never spoke badly about Jeremy. I didn't have to. The truth had already done that work. As for Jeremy, he seemed to shrink in the aftermath, not visibly. He still played the role of the involved dad, still wore his nice watch, and made small talk at school events. But something behind his eyes had faded, like he knew, finally, that I wasn't coming back. Not because of pride, but because of principle. And Allison, I didn't ask, I didn't care. She belonged to the past, to the lie he tried to live in. I didn't need to watch it fall apart. Some collapses aren't worth attending. I began journaling again, not about him, about me, what I wanted next, not just survival, joy, integrity, wholeness. I signed up for a weekend retreat in the mountains, just me, a notebook, and the kind of silence that feels earned. One night, sitting outside with a glass of wine, I reread one of Jeremy's old messages. She still thinks I'm working late. It's almost cute. I didn't feel anger, I felt gratitude, because that version of me, the one who still thought love was loyalty at any cost, she's gone. And in her place is someone stronger, someone whose silence wasn't weakness, it was precision. I didn't just survive betrayal, I turned it into an awakening. This wasn't revenge, it was reinvention.